I'd like to welcome you all to the Candidate Forum here at St. Bridget. And to my left is Steve Fournier, representing the Green Party. To his left is John Larson, representing the Democratic Party. And on the other side of John is Joe Visconti from the Republican Party. Thank you all, gentlemen, for coming out today. Here are the rules that we've set down. Each of you will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. When we get to the questioning part, you'll have 3 minutes to respond to each of 7 questions. And then you will each have 2 minutes for a closing statement. The order of the opening statement is alphabetically by name. So it'll be Fournier, Larson, Visconti. It'll be the reverse of this for the closing statement. And I'll be here to remind you in case. I get middled. And each of the questions was determined by the roll of a die. And when it comes to the question, I'll tell you who's going to be first, in the middle, and last. Is that it? Oh, my God. I forgot. The timekeeper is right here. She'll be waving that sign when you have 15 seconds.
Stop.
And you don't have to stop abruptly in the middle of a word, but it would be nice if you would stop at the end of the sentence. Okay, so let's begin. With Mr. Fournier, your opening statement for 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is a great event. These events are few and far between. Congratulations, St. Bridget's. Congratulations, Manchester, for doing this. I was born and brought up in Hartford. I went to the Hartford schools, went to Hartford High, graduated in '63. I served in the United States Air Force for 4 years, from '66 to '70, and was lucky. I got put in a non-combatant job in Europe instead of having to go to Asia, where a lot of my friends went, and some didn't come back. And got involved in the peace movement as soon as I got out of the service. Met my wife, Ruth, who's sitting over here, and grew up on North Elm Street, right in this neighborhood, in 1970 at UConn, where we were both students. And we have 3 grown kids and 3 grandchildren. I went to law school at UConn on the GI Bill and was admitted to the bar 30 years ago. And since then, I've been furious at the erosion of the rule of law by government, not by individual people, but by government, by Democratic and Republican government, as it happens, and that's why I became a member of the Green Party. I've been a Democrat, a Roosevelt Democrat, I think I was, and I've been a Republican. I think I was a Lincoln-type Republican, and I became disaffected with the policies of the 2 parties, which, as I've seen it, have gotten closer and closer together, and I'm a proud Green, and I hope that I can show you how we distinguish ourselves from the other 2 parties today. Thank you.
Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Diane and Jean, and thank the St. Bridget's community. It's a excuse me, it's an honor to serve the people of the 1st Congressional District as your elected representative to the United States Congress. Let me say first and foremost that I'm proud of the service that my office provides for the citizens in this district. Last year alone, just 1,400 separate cases, from everything from Social Security to veterans benefits to making sure that we're taking care of the people in this district. The caseload, I think, personifies what's going on in people's lives and the important need that government can provide in a constructive way. It's also important in this district as well to make sure that we help to continue to stimulate the economy. I'm pleased that we were able to bring home more than $10 billion to our industrial base, including the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-22, the C-17, fuel cell technology that is going to propel us into generating the kind of jobs, the green jobs that we're going to need for the future. This is the kind of money, I think, that long-term, investing in our own people, in our manufacturing base, in science and engineering, is what we need. All elections are about the future. And Steve, I agree with you. This is a Rooseveltian moment. We're at a time and a point in our history and a moment when we need to step in and make sure that there's a fundamental change so that people have access to health care, so that they know that they're going to be able to educate their children, and that they know that there's going to be a job for them. It's going to require a massive investment in our infrastructure, from roads and bridges and highways and ports and airports to schools and green technology that will keep us moving forward, and that will allow us the necessary revenue that we need to afford the healthcare system and guarantee access to our educational system that's affordable for our constituents.
I guess that signaled the end, didn't it? Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks, St. Bridget's. And I'd like to thank John Larson and Steve Fournier for actually being out here with me. I know there's been a lot of talk about the third party not being included. I did run as a independent in West Hartford a few years ago, so I know the feeling of being put aside and not being involved in the debates. I did sign Steve's petition to become a candidate. I think it's so important that everyone get into government and do all they can do for whatever their belief or their party system is. I'm glad we're here today at St. Bridget's because I think one of the things lacking in government is not religion but spirituality. And a lot of the questions that are being that may be coming up this year, and whoever's elected as the president, are issues on abortion, issues on the right to life, and a lot of issues that are very touchy politically. But policy is one thing, our spirituality is another. And our humanitarian efforts, whether it's from immigration control and enforcement to all the things we're seeing in the healthcare industry, where we're CEOs making a lot of money as CEOs of healthcare industries, and our doctors are squeezed, and we see our humanity reduced to a digit. And we come first. American Republican Democrat, that's not as important, I believe, as our humanity. And I think no matter what happens in this election, that Congress, the new administration, really needs to take a look at not the separation of spirituality from politics. And in whatever your faith is, it's so important that we come together and we find ways to work through our policies. And remember, we're human beings first, and God, the God of our choice should still always remain the ability of each one of us to choose.
Thank you, gentlemen. Question number one, Mr. Fournier, followed by Mr. Visconti, followed by Mr. Larson. Has to do with energy policy. There are proposed solutions for energy scarcity that range from greater investment in conservation to offshore drilling to pursuing renewable sources. What type of policy would you give first priority and why?
I would give first priority to alternatives to fuel burning. I believe that fuel burning has caused us untold catastrophic consequences. I believe that our children and grandchildren will pay a price for what we have done up to this point. I'm convinced from the scientific evidence that the climate is changing, and it's not just changing a little bit, it's changing suddenly. And whether the Earth can sustain this, we don't know. Whether humanity can sustain it, we don't know. And I see a lot of people about my age. We're going to be gone. Our children are going to be facing the consequences of what I would call profligate fuel burning. And so we have to find ways, alternatives to burning gasoline, oil, gas, wood, coal, and the rest of these things. Smoke is poison. And it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like we're overcome by it, but it's up in our upper atmosphere right now, and it's interfering with life on this planet. and it has to be reversed. And so that means we've got to bring about controls on fuel burning. That means efficiency standards. And we have to bring technologies to the public that are developed, by the way. We don't have to work frantically to develop technologies to do this. They are there. We haven't exploited them because our public policy is controlled by the people who sell and buy oil, gas, automobiles, and the things that have harmed us. And we have to cure that. I would be in favor of no-fare public ground transportation. I think that we could immediately reduce emissions considerably, take automobiles off the road and airplanes out of the air if we simply subsidized the fares for travel from point to point in the continental United States. And it's something that can be done. It's something that ought to be done. We have no-fare transit in some towns. We haven't got it generally. We would benefit in 100 different ways from this. Take us out of our cars, be the first thing. I would not be for expanding the gas and oil way. I'm not for drilling in the Arctic. I'm not for drilling offshore. I'm not for burning another gallon of oil. It's got to stop. It's got to stop this now. It's got to stop immediately. Your grandchildren will thank you if you do this. I think that the exploitation of this resource is a high priority for Democrats and Republicans. The exploitation of oil, and not because our economy demands it, but because their financiers do. Thank you.
I agree with some of the aspects of what Mr. Fournier spoke about. But, you know, I looked at my oil tank this morning, and it's half down, and I saw the price of oil. So I'm going to grab the old coal stove out of the garage and hook it up. And I don't want to do that, but you know what? A couple fans in the room, a lot of people are going to be doing it because we are. This is almost like there was a big party on a weekend, and it's time to clean it up. And this is what we've been dealing with in our country. Again, you could blame the politicians, you can blame policy, we can blame each other, but we're where we are now and we have to get out of there. So what we do to survive is one thing through this winter that's coming, and hopefully it's not that difficult. I do believe that this should be a comprehensive plan that actually includes all forms of energy, and hopefully we do wean ourselves off of these carbon-based fuels in the future. But I think that since the rest of the world won't do it, especially China and the things that are happening there, it doesn't mean we don't want to conserve or stop global warming if that's the case, but we have to understand that we can't enforce other countries to do it too. So we have to do a balancing act. I believe that we can do clean and safe nuclear, totally different than we did 30, 40 years ago. The technology is there with safe cleanup of the spent fossil fuel. I believe that drilling, I know they passed 50 miles offshore. I understand how people are concerned that there's going to be, like in California, oil wells on the shore where you're, in spills and whatnot. But I think strategically we can find ways to open up a little closer to homeland. I don't like to see the fact that big oil, and this is a problem, and I'm sure John Larson here will tell you more about that. Big oil and big energy will just shut out everyone in that process. I'm concerned over any of our new technologies, from coal to gas to shale, oil out in the Rockies, anything we want to open up. That big oil, big energy, and I'm a Republican saying this, does not hijack this and cut out the small businessman, and I think government needs to get involved, whether it's through quotas in the future or some form of allowing the small business entrepreneur or those that are in the technology-based areas to actually be involved in any new program, so that we don't end up with 3 banks, 3 oil companies, and basically monopolies on everything. So environment first, of course, but we have to balance ourselves to the future. We can't politicize any one of these forms of energies. We really need to take a hard look at where we were, be very forgiving to ourselves, and as Republicans, Democrats, and any independents that are voted into Congress, work together for a comprehensive plan to get out of this and move towards a better future, which I'm sure we will.
All set? I don't think there's any more important and pressing issue that we face in this country than making sure that we're energy independent and, in the short term, energy sufficient. It's rare that you can focus on a specific issue and get to talk about not only energy, the economy, the environment, and foreign policy, but they're all inextricably linked. I think it begins, as the question suggests, with conservation. Everybody has to recognize their own personal responsibility, both to your community and to the larger globe that we live in. And so the conservation ethic that this country has always abided by is certainly important and has to be subscribed to. I believe to make the transition in the short run, we're going to have to rely on energy sources that have, unfortunately, as both Steve and Joe have pointed out, been a major cause of pollution, global warming, and a deep and abiding concern. And so, therefore, the major investment on the part of government has got to come in the area of alternative fuels. Yes, drill in the lands that we've designated already. And hopefully the aspect and the opportunities and the technology that will afford us to tap into natural gas will prove to be bountiful for us as well as we make the transition to a cleaner economy. But I believe, as the head of the founding member of the Hydrogen Caucus, that the most abundant element in the universe has to be harnessed, and we make them here in the state of Connecticut. We make hydrogen fuel cells. We have 8 companies, 4 companies in my district, 2 of the major companies in the world. Unfortunately, some of them are thinking about moving to other countries whose policies have emphasized investment in these alternatives. United Technologies is a world leader. If we can heat and cool the space station and provide them with their drinking and bathing water, can we get people back and forth to work here in this country? I think we can. It's just a matter of will and investment on behalf of government. And rather than making the huge investments that we've seen in the areas of drilling for fossil fuels, we need to make a statement here that will embrace our economy, put our people in this country back to work in a technology that employs them, but also provides us with the opportunity to help and aid the environment by having a clean technology and export commodities and goods to areas like China and Africa and emerging nations. Restore our economic vitality in a way by employing our people, keeping the economy running strong, keep the environment cleaner, and oh, by the way, wean us off of dependence on foreign oil. There is no doubt in my mind, after witnessing these last years of the war in Iraq, that we have been entangled and mired in foreign policy because of our addiction to oil.
Thank you, gentlemen. The second question is on health care, and the order will be Mr. Visconti, Mr. Larson, and Mr. Fournier. Medical bills can be financially disastrous. Many poor people don't even have access to regular care. Other developed countries provide universal care, have better health outcomes, and spend much less than we do. What type of reform to our health care system would you support to provide affordable care for all?
Well, for all is the big question, and that means government health insurance, which I oppose. I believe, like with energy, we need to keep free markets involved, but I don't like the way I see the free markets involved today. I don't like to see the people that are running the healthcare industry making billions of dollars in profit. I don't like to see the doctor squeeze, the patient squeeze, right for the people who have insurance now. What are your deductibles? What's the coverage today? So if we let free market reign completely, you'll see what happens just like on Wall Street. But if we have government intervention totally, I believe that further extreme will lead to socialism and poor service. So we need to strike a balance somehow, and like with energy, phase in some new regulations. Some people asked me on WNPR the other day, was I for CEO salary caps? I said I was for publicly traded companies and also for companies that receive any state or federal money. If these corporations cannot regulate themselves, then government would have to step in at one point so that the industries are not gamed at the expense, again, of humanity. Right now in Connecticut, we have the Husky program and I think the Charter Oak Health. So some states don't have all of that, but we do take care of many at the lower level of government. The people that fall between the cracks is the problem. And how do you get people to buy into something? I think if you can make it affordable, if you can get the healthcare industry, put something around them and pull them to the table to do better than they've been doing, or actually tell them that they're going to have problems with some regulations with the way their corporations are run. The humanity, again, it's just key to everything we're dealing with, whether it's the energy, whether it's global warming, whether it's the coverage on our policies when you call up and find out this isn't covered, or I don't have insurance and the bill ends up with somebody else. Every piece of it ends up, our humanity is sacrificed. And it's gamed on Wall Street, and it's gamed on Farmington Avenue with the actuarial foxes there that actually work to look at the numbers and see how much they can profit off of our illnesses. Again, we have to find a balance between that, between government and the private sector, and Congress needs to stay in Congress. It needs to stop receiving so much of its, well, I'll just say it. How many congressmen are receiving health care special interest money? And are they helping us? Is this good for us? So I think the way you look at Congress is Congress needs to stay at the Capitol. I think there should be truancy laws. I think there should be term limits. I think that there should be a vote yes or no voting president rule. So they're really staying on the issue, and that we hold everyone accountable from free market to the government policies.
I said at the outset that this was a Rooseveltian moment, and indeed it is. It's the logical follow-on to what Roosevelt envisioned in the New Deal and Lyndon Baines Johnson envisioned with a great society. And so we come to a point where 47 million fellow Americans go without any health insurance whatsoever, and at any given point in time, that can be as high as 85 million people. So when we talk about humanity and the importance and moral responsibility that we have to our fellow citizens, first and foremost is to make sure that they're guaranteed to accessibility to health care. Now, our health care operates under a misnomer in this country. We call it health care. It's really sick care, because the time we utilize it is when people go to the hospital. We need to change the paradigm and focus on wellness. And that starts with making sure that we provide a floor, that we provide a safety net for all American citizens. When 14% of your gross domestic product is used for health care, George David, the president and CEO of UTC, said, look, we can wean just out of that alone the savings that we need to make sure that we provide, much in the same way that we have Social Security and Medicare for all of our citizens, an opportunity to make sure that they have access to health care. And then provide and allow the private sector to work its genius and to provide a cafeteria approach to the solutions that we need so that people can expand through their workforce, opportunity to have greater access to health care. That won't happen unless we also have a catastrophic piece, because no family or no individual can deal with illnesses that beset them in a catastrophic manner. That has to be a role of all the fellow citizens. That's why we endeavor to form a more perfect union under the Constitution. And under an Obama administration, it will happen within the first term. We've learned a valuable lesson in 1992, what happens when you go out and try to solve a problem without having the business community, without having the citizens of the country behind you. I believe now that people are aligned to make sure that for the sake of the businesses, for the sake of economic growth, and for the sake of your fellow citizens, that nobody is denied access to a health care system that starts with wellness as its primary goal, emphasizes individual responsibility, but steps in so the government does not allow anyone to fall through that safety net. Our emergency rooms are our health care system now, which have overclogged our operation, driven up the costs that we incur, and this way, with greater government oversight as well, we can wean out those costs and provide every American citizen with the health care that they deserve.
Well, I heard nothing specific from either the Democrat or Republican. I heard that we need a balanced health care system, balancing the public with the private, and that we need wellness and And I have a specific, and the specific would be a single-payer health insurance provided by the government, phased in over a number of years so that everyone is covered. My wife and I are paying an unbelievable amount of money for health insurance to a private company. I think it's time to take private enterprise out of health care, at least out of the insurance side of it. I do believe that private hospitals and physicians are performing important, critical service and have to be remunerated for it. But the private health insurance industry has really corrupted public policy. They own our Congress. They own our state legislators. They pay large amounts of money into political action committees to keep the politicians going, and they expect from that the preservation of this private health insurance system. It's not working. I was at a forum a couple of nights ago with a state committee that is appointed by the governor to investigate what to do about health care in Connecticut, and I heard a lot of unhappy stories of people that had to shop for health care. And I've had it with that. I don't want to shop for health care anymore. It's not the way that we do things in the 21st century. I think it's not the way we should do. This employer-sponsored health care doesn't work. Employers are just cutting back and cutting back. Your co-pays go up, and your deductibles go up, and they limit you to about $3,000 worth of coverage per person, per employee, and that's not enough to finance your health care. If you were buying it from the government and saving the administrative costs and the commissions and the fees and the profit, you'd get it at half the cost, and you'd get twice as much for your money. This is a scam that's being perpetrated on us by Democrats, Republicans, and the healthcare industry. I'm all for balance. You know, I try to keep in balance. I have bitterness, you know, but I have rage too, and I keep those balanced. You know, that's the kind of balance. Yeah, I say that it's time to take private enterprise out of this little equation, and it's the way that we're going to move in the 21st century. These are your 20th century candidates. I consider myself the 21st century candidate. Thank you.
Question number 3 has to do with immigration. Mr. Larson, you'll respond first, Mr. Fournier, and then Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, Bill. I think that immigration is a...
Oh, we got to get a question here. We got a question, John.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thought it was about
Only a
immigration.
few blocks from here, there's an empty house. It is owned by a foreign-born couple who have lived there for over 20 years. Recently, the husband was deported without dignity or due process. The wife will not be able to make the mortgage payments without her husband. What measures would you consider essential to a new comprehensive immigration reform policy?
Well, I think there are several essential positions to any immigration policy. And first, it has to start with making sure that our borders are secure. We cannot forget, and nor should we, the perils of September the 11th. And while we have made great strides along this area, much work still has to be done, probably more so in our ports and ironically around the Canadian border than around the southern border. But nonetheless, that's where we have to start. Secondly, I think that there has to be a way in which, in a comprehensive manner, that we can both acknowledge the enormous workforce that we have here currently that is employed and does a valuable service to every single American, and the families that they have as well. And so we must set up in a comprehensive manner an opportunity to make sure that they get their citizenship, to make sure that they speak the language as part of the law and as part of bringing Americans together. I was pleased to see that the Congressional Hispanic Caucus brought that to the forefront. And legislation, though, must be viewed comprehensively and not from any vitriol that goes after goes after immigrants in a way that is totally inhumane and not fair. So between an identification process and whether it's biometrically achieved or whatever the science of the day will provide for us, so that there's an opportunity for us to bring the people into this country that we need to, and provide a provision for people to find a path forward to citizenship, but acknowledging that they are here against the law. And then once we have acknowledged that, and I believe the only way that you're going to entice them into that is by offering a path forward to our citizens so that they can reap in the bounties of this country, and some of them, rather than being part of a current undermarket, get the opportunity to continue to pay taxes to this great country of ours, as all immigrants have who have come here in the past. This is a problem for people because of some of the jobs that have taken place, and to the unscrupulous who take advantage of immigrants and who take advantage of this work situation. There has to be more rigorous laws and prosecution with respect to the employers who exploit immigrants as well, who provide and tap into that black market as a source of income. But overall, it needs a comprehensive approach that does start with humanity.
I think we're enriched by immigration and not harmed by it. This is a big country. There's plenty to do here. Go by any school or bridge and see the condition that our infrastructure is in, and you'll see that there's plenty of labor to be expended to make our lives better. There's a few million people that came here from other places to work, and they do work. They wouldn't be here if they weren't going to work. They're underpaid. They probably shouldn't be underpaid. They are exploited, as Congressman Larson has pointed out. But they are not here to harm us. They have the idea that somebody that's going to work at McDonald's and preparing French fries over there has something to do with 9/11 makes me sick. I don't want to hear 9/11 raised again against immigrants who are here to work. These are the best of us, not the worst of us, and I think that it's pure bigotry. And I don't think there are very many bigots among us either. I think that the bigots are the people in power who try to divide us with this diversion. This is a diversion so that we don't take a look at what's happened to us, what's happened to our economy, what's happened to our values, what's happened to our institutions, what's happened to our infrastructure, what's happened to our tax system, you know, what's happened to us. And this diversion is a brutal and unsightly in the eyes of the world situation that we've let ourselves get into. This used to be a free country, you know. We weren't challenging people on the street to show their papers. We had open borders, and we were prosperous in those days. And now we're not prosperous anymore. We've got our borders sealed up with walls and with heavily armed soldiers. And this is what we want from our country? I don't think so. I think that this is an inhumane and in every way abominable situation. And from the point of view of people who are trying to do good works, you know, and I think that that's a lot of what motivates people to be involved in a church like this. It's not all worship. A lot of it is an opportunity to do something good for your fellow man. And you can do something good for your fellow man by dispensing with bigotry, challenging it wherever you find it, and according people the dignity that they deserve when they work. There's plenty of room here, there's plenty of jobs here, there's plenty to do, and we should welcome people who are willing to do that, and we should learn from them as they make their living and bring their families up. Thank you.
Wow. Well, you know, I feel a little spiritual today because I'm in a Catholic church, but I'm going to go off tangent here and respectfully disagree with Mr. Fournier and Mr. Larson. Mr. Fournier, a lawyer, Mr. Larson making over $160,000 a year as a U.S. congressman. I'm a general contractor, a carpenter. These people are taking our jobs, period. It's an economic problem. It is not racial or bigotry. period. Okay? Now, if anybody would like to take some time this week and follow me around the state, I'll bring you to some job sites. We'll take a peek at what's going on. These are not jobs we don't want. These are jobs Americans want, my crews want, I want. Not everybody's working at McDonald's. They're here against the law. They broke the law. Law enforcement is not a suggestion. They should come out, turn themselves in. We can help them humanely go back to their country. It will take years to do, but this is something that can happen. Or offer amnesty. And if you'd like to do that, Congress, Mr. Larson, should act after 10 years on the amnesty. I don't believe in the amnesty because we are not credible. We had amnesty in the 90s. We will have amnesty again. We'll have another 10 million people here. We're having a budget referendum in West Hartford. We have illegal aliens in our school system, and I can't know why as a town councilor. It's against the law. They're here. They're taking from our children. I have to compete with 6 men to a room to pay a mortgage as a contractor. This is an economic problem. Don't fall prey. Don't fall sympathy. I know there's problems with the Catholic Church involved with this, and I think this is something they should stay out of. We need to take a good hard look at not just employers as the scapegoats. Our borders need to be closed. The inner cities of Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven are full of drugs that come in across the border on the backs of many of these people, not all of them, but many of them. They tempt our youth to drop out of school, to sell drugs, to get involved with drug sales. They don't go to college. If they don't end up in prison or dead, they end up not in the construction trades because the jobs were taken by the very people who bring the drugs in. We need to close the borders. If we would like to have amnesty, then vote on it, John. If we would like to make a difference in the way people go back to their country, we can vote on that too. But not to enforce the law. A nation without borders is not a nation. A nation without law enforcement is a nation without laws. And it's time we take a good hard look of why we didn't allow so many of these people here. We can't afford the social cost. The jobs don't pay what they cost in the social organism. One of my grandparents came here, all 4 of them, from Italy. There wasn't the social programs or the handouts or the things that we have today. It's too costly. It's an economic problem. It is not racial. It is not bigotry.
The next question has to do with poverty. Mr. Fournier will be first, Mr. Visconti, and Mr. Larson. The U.S. definition of poverty seriously underestimates the true cost of living. Nevertheless, we have 37 million people that meet this outdated definition who are living in poverty, and the number is rising. What programs do you support to reduce poverty and create economic opportunities for all?
Immediately, I would support Public Works program. Instead of spending $700 billion to refinance bankers, we should have spent $700 billion on repairing our roads, our bridges, our schools, and our public wealth of various kinds. What we've seen year after year after year is idle people standing right next to jobs that need to get done. And why don't they get done? Well, they don't get done because we live in a market economy. And that means that nothing gets done except what generates a profit for private parties. And when we talk about private parties, we're talking about the rich. They're the ones that own the capital in this country, and they're the ones that dictate public policy. There's no reason on earth that we shouldn't have spent that money on something instead of just giving it away to a bunch of rich bankers so that they would continue to extend us credit. We're living on credit. I was at a forum the other day with Congressman Larson and a panel of experts talking about the bailout bill that just went through. And one of them said, let's face it, we live in a debt-driven economy. Well, I'm sorry, you don't live in a debt-driven economy. There's no such thing. A debt-driven economy is a dying economy. It's an economy that's headed for catastrophic failure. You cannot borrow and borrow and borrow and expect someday to be healthy and wealthy and wise. You will not be. You will end up with nothing. And this is the way that we've been going. Now, we have to over the long term. So in the short term, public works. I say I'm a Rooseveltian. Yes, I am. I'm not for spending money for nothing. I'm for spending money to bring people up from the bottom. And over the long term, we can do a lot about poverty simply by bringing back standards. Institutions generate standards. You know, this church lives by standards and generates standards, and schools do. And we really have dumbed ourselves down quite a bit. We don't have a lot of standards. We don't have standards even to regulate how things are done in government. We have, for schools, we allow a third of our kids in Hartford, at least a third, to come out non-readers. And I don't mean that they choose not to read. I mean that they can't read. If every child came out of third grade knowing how to read, then 11, 12, 14 years later, you're going to see poverty begin to abate because people are going to be able to do the things that need to be done to keep families together and to keep bread on the table. Thank you.
Who's next?
Ah, I knew you guys would get me.
I think Joe's next.
I think I'm next.
Yeah, I think Joe's next on this one.
It's Mr. Visconti.
A man once said, the poor you will have with you always. And I think everyone in this room knows who that man is. This is not something that people want to have, poverty in the world, but it ends up being something that seems to always occur no matter what society or history has done. Vocational training, and there may be questions on education, so I won't steer too far into this, but vocational training, especially in the inner cities. For years as a general contractor, I've reached into the labor pools, labor-ready, and groups that bring a lot of young men that dropped out. They don't have skills. They have labor. They have the strength. They have a desire to learn. And I think the unions are doing a little bit with that. I think we need to do more with the federal government to get vocational training. Not everyone is going to go to college or have college aspirations. It's just a fact of life. And this does tail in with the illegal immigration in a way, because many of those jobs at the lower entry levels also affect the illegals. And this is important also. 24 million American immigrants are legal. They're here with green cards. So I want to make sure we're clear that we're not speaking about those people. They have visas, working visas, and they're here rightfully so. But for the 12 million or whatever the amount is. So it's a variety of factors between job scarcity and actually people that want to enter the trades. Now, the trades are a great place. I went to college, but I was raised by my dad in construction and carpentry since I don't remember the first day I went to work with him. And that was the old school. You went to work with your dad. If it was sheetrock or roofing or whatever you did, you started to learn on a Saturday, unload the truck, and all those things. And vocational training does exist, but I think more and more, and especially in the inner cities where the dropout rates are alarming, the vocational training for the trades, for there's grants for people who want to go to hairdressing school. A lot of that needs to be increased so that we get those that are unemployed at the very beginning not to enter into poverty, because they may not start off there, but they may end up because of the training. The opportunities also need to be had. I mean, they have to be created. But I think the market will do so much. Government can do so much. But today, Steve is right about this. Today, where we are after bailing out Wall Street, which I would have definitely voted against for that plan, how are we going to do that? There's only so much to go around at these economic times to try to get government to raise taxes, to pour more into programs. We're in a horrible position right now, but education at the vocational level, I think, could help many young people move, not into poverty later in life. That's fine.
I think the greatest way to combat poverty is through the dignity that comes from a job. And I've never met a family, a breadwinner of that family or co-winners of a family, that didn't wonder, looking across the kitchen table at one another, whether or not, as people are today, they can make ends meet. They're going to be able to provide for an education. They're going to have that nest egg, that there is health care or even long-term care accessible to them. And so, yes, as I said before, it's a Roosevelt moment for this country. For the last 8 years under this administration, we've seen the middle class decline in actual income, while the effective work and their efficiency has increased, the amount of money that they're taking home has declined. The notion somehow that without government intervening on behalf of their citizens that they're sworn to serve, that people can make it is just flat out wrong. We've just witnessed in the last week the ramifications of failed market policies without appropriate regulation. So, first and foremost, let's put America back to work. Let's do so by creating the infrastructure jobs that are vitally important to our citizens. And by that, I mean not only roads and bridges and highways, but ports and schools, and the broadband that those schools are going to need in order to be digitally fluent in a global economy. In order to achieve that goal, you're going to have to keep your schools open as well. By schools, I mean our community colleges. They're going to have to be open during the evening and accessible to people after work. Because in a global economy, and the rate of change in terms of the advancement of technology and innovation is going to force our workforce to continue to have to be adaptive and change. We must be in government in the position to facilitate that by keeping our schools open and accessible to them, not only at night, but on the weekends as well. In doing so, a knowledge-based economy, which will once again propel the United States to a brighter future, is precisely what's called for. And innovation in the areas of technology, especially green technology, that will both provide us with the jobs, provide us with the employment, and provide us with the ability to wean ourselves off of poverty. But it can't happen without working in our inner cities where we have many children of poverty as well who are Americans. Yes, there are those that are here illegally, but we have far more children in rural and urban America who are going without jobs necessary to keep them out of harm's way and a path forward to employment and education.
The fifth question has to do with national security. Mr. Visconti will reply first, Mr. Larson, Mr. Fournier. Since the Cold War, the U.S. has maintained a security presence around the world and paid a high price in terms of social services at home, personal sacrifice, and growing disfavor abroad. Do you expect to continue a policy based primarily on military strength, or do you plan on leading us to a foreign policy based on dialogue and on using our resources to rebuild our nation?
Well, what John Larson spoke about, bringing money back to Pratt, Whitney, UTC, and all that military spending, we have to look at our economy here. Of course, no one wants war. No one wants to have war. People want to sit down and work things out. But Connecticut is a defense industry state. So if the question is only general for the world versus our first district, we are here. I think military spending, of course, needs to decline as we move out of the problems we're having in the world, if we're able to move out, if dialogue is actually going to be able to work. We see Russia reemerging with Venezuela. We see Pakistan, their country being divided right now. How we got into this war, right or wrong, the Middle East, the future, looking forward, I can't tell you, I don't think anyone at this table can tell you that we're not going to be in other conflicts in the future. But diplomacy is number one. And if we're going to work with people in these countries that want to be diplomatic, and this is the problem we're having, the extreme religious Islamic terrorists are everywhere. Now, this isn't a George Bush moment here. Like Mr. Larson said, he had a Roosevelt moment. The fact is they're everywhere, and they're not going to stop. This has been centuries These people have been working toward the extremists to hijack their religion. Now, you could say, well, we don't want to throw aircraft carriers after terrorists with suicide bombs, so do we really need to build submarines? Well, take a look at Connecticut's industry. Do we need more submarines? Do we need large M1 tanks? What type of military do we foresee in the future if we have to continue to defend ourselves and pull away from the rest of the world? Can we afford it? A lot of these questions are subject to debate, and what happens, like on Wall Street, it becomes reactionary. Uh-oh, there's a conflict. Let's have a law. Mr. Larson's been there 10 years. He knows about the laws that come up however he votes, and there's a war. There's a skirmish. There's a problem. The military's asking for more. There needs to be more accountability on purchasing. There needs to be more accountability across the board in the federal government. But I believe that diplomacy is very important. Many believe that if a new Democratic leader comes in, that they can do better than Senator McCain. I think Senator McCain is the perfect candidate who has the world experience to understand who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And Mr. Obama, I believe, is naive in his statements that he would like to sit down with terrorists and not put anything, not terrorists, but countries, that actually sponsor terrorism. I think that is naive at best, and that's not the type of dialogue that I would support. But John McCain does know where our problems are, and I would put my faith in him to know when it's time to have dialogue and when it's time to actually take a stand and do what the country may need to do in the future.
The Bush doctrine of preemption and unilateralism is the biggest foreign policy mistake in the history of the country. To have led us into a war of choice, and which is exceeded over $700 billion in cost, and to have created the situation that exists around the world today has been nothing short of catastrophic for America. To convey how different this approach is to understand what a radical departure this is from 50 years of both Democrat and Republican foreign policy as it related to the Marshall Plan and diplomacy, deterrence, and containment. To go it alone and to call for preemptive strike allowed Putin to slip a dagger into Bush's back while he was sitting with him at the Olympics and turn and smile and said, I just utilized the same strategy that you so outlined in preemptive strike in unilateral commitment. We have got to understand, first and foremost in this country, that there are dangers abroad that we need to face. But we have to face them in the traditional way that Americans have. The Marshall Plan, understanding the need for us to lead by the power of our example, not the power of our military. Our military is the best in the world. Our men and women in armed services have performed extraordinarily well. We all owe them a debt of gratitude for what they have done on behalf of their nation. They salute and follow orders. But it's up to the policymakers in Washington who ultimately determine what's going to happen to make sure that we have a foreign policy that returns to one based on the precepts of diplomacy, deterrence, and containment. Yes, of course, we should sit down with other people around the globe because that's the most important way that you get to understand where they're coming from. And far from being naive, Obama has demonstrated the kind of judgment that we need in a president who understands what we have to do in this century, who understands that we have a cauldron that's brewing in the Middle East, in the convergence of global problems, starting with global warming and climate change and global trade, but also a global war on terror, that if we don't strike at its roots and change, we'll be in for a longer haul yet to come.
The military is depleted and the soldiers are exhausted. War does not improve your defense. War makes you less able to defend yourself. And this is what we've been doing. This is Democrats and Republicans working together. They keep on sending the money to do this. They will spend with private contractors and other people making a profit on all this. This is probably the first war in history that has been, there are two wars, let's say, two. Let's not forget that we have a war going on in Iraq and a war going on in Afghanistan. Republicans and Democrats both want to continue the war in Afghanistan. They're for that. Obama is for it. McCain is for it. Congress, both sides for it. Afghanistan, keep it going. There has no end. It has no end to it. It has no objective. The idea of providing some sort of Western government in Afghanistan is the dumbest idea that's ever been proposed. It isn't going to happen. It's not the United States of America. The idea that military hardware and deploying soldiers somehow gives us credibility with our adversaries is another dumb idea. These ideas are propounded so that the war profiteers can continue to make a profit on bloodshed, because that's what it is. You know, in the 20th century, maybe there was a place for this sort of mayhem. In the 21st century, there is no place for this. The United States policy of war-making, of permanent state of warfare is anachronistic and deadly, and our children and grandchildren are going to be paying for it long after we're dead. They're going to be paying for this. And you know, I was in the Air Force. I was not a combatant. I had very good duty. I was so lucky. And you know, you're together in a barracks. I was an enlisted man. You're together in a barracks with a bunch of guys, and everybody wants to go home. And, you know, you remember those conversations. And you don't tell your captain that you want to go home. You know, that's not the thing to do. But when you're with your bunkmates, that's what you're talking about. And here are these poor guys stranded in Afghanistan and Iraq and other parts of the uncivilized world compared to what we have here. And they're stuck. And is anybody rescuing them? No. Does anybody care about them? No. You know, they are there to, what, project our strength in the world? They don't project strength. They don't. You know, they're battened down in their barracks in Iraq right now. They can't even go outside. And they know that this was a dumb idea, and they know also, or at least they feel, that nobody here really cares about them anymore. And I think that they're justified in that conclusion. I think Democrats and Republicans have proved that, and really you got to get them out of there.
Question number 6 has to do with free markets. Mr. Larson, Mr. Fournier, and Mr. Visconti. We often hear that a free market is what makes this country great. Yet government policy in recent years has allowed corporations to eliminate their competition and grow larger than most countries. When they falter, we hear that they are too big to be allowed to fail, and therefore taxpayers will have to bail them out. What is your position on increasing corporate regulation versus maintaining the type of free market competition that we have now?
Well, I believe in the free market system, and I think it's a system that is done extraordinarily well by this country. But like every system, if it is not appropriately regulated, then it runs into problems. Or as my grandfather Nolan used to say, trust everyone, but cut the cards. And not only do we need to cut the cards, but we need a new shuffle, and as I've alluded to several times, a new deal for the American people. And for American shareholders that starts with CEO accountability, so that there should be a CEO Bill of Rights for shareholders, a shareholders' Bill of Rights, so that we can constrain what all too often happens in our society and all too often happens in our system, a system of greed. What infuriates and outrages Americans most is when they see that they work hard and play by the rules and someone else doesn't, and not only do they not work hard and play by the rules, but they get a bailout and they get a golden parachute to boot. And life goes on for them, and you continue to work hard. Americans are outraged, they're angered, and they're frustrated. So am I. Change is on the way for too many years, in too many administrations. But certainly in these last 8 years, it's clear to see that all too often the foxes were guarding the henhouse. And it's also clear to see that what happened and what transpired when you have a system that allows the enormous amount of money to be made legally, that it's taken advantage of when there's an absence of regulation and oversight. John Mitchell, an oil dealer from South Windsor, Connecticut, former Republican mayor, came to me and said, John, I'm telling you, the laws of supply and demand have been suspended. They no longer apply. What's happening when the oil's commodity markets is a sin. He said, I weep when I have to take a woman's Social Security check and turn it over to pay for the oil that she needs for her home. I'm telling you, it's the speculators that have been gaming the system. We need more regulation. She said, you know I'm a lifelong Republican. He says, but you need to step in and do something about it. We sat down and we wrote the legislation together. We got that changed, finally, in the last session of Congress. More needs to be done. People, you can't, the other shoe hasn't fallen yet with respect to hedge funds and other unregulated activities that happen in the over-the-counter or dark market. It was a terrible situation last week in the United States Congress. I didn't want to vote for this legislation. I was as outraged as everyone else. But in order to stop the bleeding, to make sure that people could make payrolls, to make sure that people could afford to go out and get a loan, to sit there and roll the dice and not be sure whether or not the phone calls you're receiving from people who say, hey, I can't make my payroll, when the state of California sends a message that says we're going to have to lay off massive people because of this. How far were other states behind? I realize how angry and frustrated people are, but sometimes you have to do the right thing even though it pains you to do so.
Well, you wouldn't know that John Larson voted twice for this legislation. You know, he gave 10. I went to a little gathering that was put together in Manchester a few days ago, and we had a panel of experts up in front, and they gave at least 10 good reasons not to do it, and then we went ahead and did it. And I know I called and said, please don't do this, and I know a lot of other people did, but you know, the calls that count are the few calls that come from the people that put up the money for this enterprise that we call politics and government. And you know, as far as the New Deal is concerned, they repealed the New Deal. We had a law that regulated banks to keep us from getting into this situation, so that they wouldn't be buying up investment banks and investing in risky investments and bidding up prices of real estate and doing the things that they've done with easy credit to really put money in their pocket. All along the way, they expanded this bubble, and every time there was a sale, they put something in their pocket. And now that the value seems to be declining and the bubble is bursting, they want us to pay them for their losses. And that is the wrong way to go about this. We had a law, and it was repealed by Democrats and Republicans working together. Republican Congress passed it. Democratic, and I don't know how the congressman voted on it. I'm not sure if he was there yet, but Clinton is the one that signed it. It was Democrats and Republicans that made this happen, and that was the New Deal. That was the New Deal that came out during Roosevelt that they repealed, and that cost us $700 billion the other day. And I want to tell you, this is probably the first time in our history that Congress has voted to do something this big without a hearing, without due consideration. They made it an emergency. They were out there panicking people. I've never seen government officials go out and try to get people into a panic. I don't know how many calls Congressman Larson had from people that couldn't meet their payroll, but I'm going to guess that it's not very many compared to the number that came in and said, please don't do this. And, you know, easy credit, you can have it, you know, for a while, and then it stops. And what we've done here with this $700 billion is pump it into bankers so they could, first of all, they're going to take a big chunk of it, and it's going to go right into the ground. It's going to be buried so that we can't touch it, you know, because why not? Why shouldn't they? You know, we're not paying our debts. We're in a war that's going to cost us maybe $3-4 trillion bucks, and nobody's paying for it. And by the way, nobody paid for this bailout either. There was not a tax bill. I asked Congressman Larson, I said, You know, why not regulate first and give them the money later? Oh, you can't do that. It takes an awful lot of preparation and thought to do regulation. But you can give away $700 billion on nothing. Yeah, right.
Okay, here we go. Sorry I'm in a Catholic church, but I'm going here. This is nothing more than the big dig. Everyone remember what the big dig is? Well, they're going to be digging in our wallets again next, whoever the president is next spring. It's unconscionable what's been done. John Larson is the vice chair of the Democratic caucus. He's the fifth most powerful congressman I'm sitting next to. With all due respect, he could have put up a red flag if he was paying attention to what's been happening. He has the ear of Nancy Pelosi. He has the ear of Chris Dodd. These are people from his party, very powerful people. But instead, he was out in Iowa with Chris Dodd when he was running for president in January. And on my website, ViscontiForCongress.com, you'll see a YouTube of Mr. Larson here saying we have a saying in Connecticut. It says, "In Dodd we trust." Well, I don't trust Chris Dodd. And I never heard of that saying. I don't know about you people. But, the scapegoat, I don't know, all these plans that John is speaking about, and some of them sound really great. But it's been a decade, and I don't know when I'm going to hear any of these things come to fruition. I don't want to hear it's the Democrats against the Republicans. The Republicans come back here and really make a stand all during these 10 years and show us the things that are actually happening. This Wall Street bailout, let's get back to the question of what we should do with the private versus the government. I think if you allow, and I'm a Republican, but if you allow Republicans to go too far to the right, they become robber barons. And then that's not what the Republican Party is. And if we allow the left, the Democrats, to go too far to the left, we become socialists. And we have communism, and we have no breath. So again, it's a balance. That's why there's two parties, or even with Steve here with new ideas, whether I agree with it or not. We're trying to find, and we do at the end, a middle ground where we can get something done. But where we don't have a communist regime running our country and it's socialist, and we don't have robber barons running all over Wall Street ripping us off. Government's supposed to be watching that. They need to sit together. And they need not to take, as Senator Dodd has done, and I haven't studied John Larson's donation chart that well, but they need to stop taking special interest money. I do know he takes the majority of his money from special interest. I vow, if elected, I will not take special interest money. I will work so that we get PAC money, special interest money out of Congress from the Senate and the House. Term limits also. Truancy law, so you have to stay in Congress. Again, I'll reinforce that. Pay attention, vote yes or no. Do your homework. Don't delegate it to Paulson or anyone. I don't care who the next administration is. That guy will be a flawed guy that says, this was my plan. We need another $1 trillion, and the beat goes on, folks. We need accountability in government. We don't have it on John Larson's watch.
Do we get to respond to any of this stuff? And I don't want to feel like,
2 minutes.
I don't want to feel like the pincushion here. God almighty. God.
Last question. The answering order will be Mr. Fournier, Mr. Visconti, and Mr. Larson. You do get the last word.
Get the close. It's your show at the end.
Oh, yeah, the closing statement. That's
where you can get them, John.
International poverty. Evidence has mounted over the past 20 years that trade agreements promoted by the World Trade Organization, similar bilateral and regional agreements, and current U.S. negotiating positions work to the detriment of the poorer economies and poorer people within wealthier countries. How would your trade policies differ? What would make them more just and successful for our trade partners and our own workers?
My trade policies would differ because I would not be beholden to the people that benefit from the trade policies that we have right now. What we have right now is, if you look at the Nafta, for example, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Now, this is an agreement among Canada, Mexico, and the United States. And it is a it's almost impenetrable. To try to figure out what it actually does from reading it is almost impossible, because it's very, very long, and it has pages and pages and pages of individual items. And each one of those benefits somebody that gave something to somebody in our Congress, each and every one of them. Now, when you're going to do trade policy to benefit your patrons in business, then you're going to have unfair trade policy, and that's what we have. We don't have a trade policy that's in the public interest. We have a trade policy that is in the interest. We don't have a trade policy. We have 1,000 million trade policies that benefit all of these individual interests that make money off foreign trade. I would want a comprehensive trade policy that seeks to, first of all, cure the consumer economy that we've come to believe in here. I don't think that really people do believe in it. I think that we're told that we believe that, but I think, in fact, people don't like to waste stuff and throw away resources just for fun so that they can prove that they're rich. I don't believe it. I think that people like to conserve things, and and I'm the conservative up here, by the way. You know, you got a lot of radical policy going around. John Larson gives away, billions of dollars in government money to this one and that one. And, I'm the conservative here. I believe that most people are like me, that they're not profligate in the way that they do things, that they would like to have ways to make life better for people that are less fortunate than they are. And this trade policy that we have now doesn't do that. This trade policy is geared towards waste, consumption, material wealth for the few, and nothing for the rest. And I think if we take Congress and the White House, maybe someday, but Congress right now, out of the hands of the people that have brought us to this stage, and that would be Democrats and Republicans, that we can start to make some progress. And you say, well, what are you going to do? You're one guy, Well, one guy can do a lot. I was on the Hartford Board of Education, and I took it apart piece by piece in a matter of 13 months because they were criminals. They were exploiting my city, and they were dissolved by the state legislature just a couple of months after I quit in protest. So, this can be done, but it's not going to be done with the personnel that you got there now. You're going to need new personnel.
Amen to that, Steve. New personnel, that's why I'm running. China cut off funding or loaning money to United States, I think September 25th, and I'm not sure if they're ramping that back up or if they're going to take some time. John may know more about this. When we're doing trade agreements with countries and we have trade deficits and we have no fair labor standards or environmental standards, just with China, just pick the big one, whether this is part of the question or not, what does that tell you about the poor countries? What does it tell you about anything that's happening in the world? Steve is correct. The spoil system, the pork, the earmarks, the congressmen who want to bring something back to their town, and I'll sign out to the bill if you give me this, and the whole system needs to stop the way it is. First of all, before you look at how can we make a new trade agreement, you have to look at who's making a trade agreement and how do they get their funding, how do they get to sustenance, how do they stay in office. And I believe that we need to redo some of the rules for Congress. I think that if we want to actually have, like John's mentioned, some of the money he's brought back, if we have bridge problems and it's a federal DOT and we have problems throughout the country, rather than adding these small amendments to all these bills and make them convoluted and ridiculous, such as the bailout the other day, if you take a look at that document, you just won't believe what was added on. What does this have to do with that? We need to stop that. Bulk it out, make a law, pass the regulation that, we're going to work on bridges, we're going to work on inner city crime, and make that an individual stand on its own bill. Don't allow these pork things to happen. So, and the lobby influence and the business influence. So before you can say, what do we do with the trade policy? Who's your representative and who are they representing? It goes back to that. Steve is correct all the time. China, I believe, is a big problem for us, and she's going to be a bigger problem for us. I think she's building up her military at an alarming rate, and I don't know what her plans are. Some of the smaller countries that are being opted out, we're having problems with that. Senator McCain wants to open up a, do away or opt out of dealing with the United Nations because of the problems over there. So we can't see the United Nations with any fairness when they put some past terrorist leaders as their whatever the human department they had. I mean, if you study the details, you say, what's going on? How does this happen? Where's our leadership? Who approved that? So it's America first, and we need to write legislation that affects us here first before the foreign corporations that are American that are overseas and want this, or this one wants that one. We need to make America first, write trade agreements that benefit us first here at home.
The United States foreign policy has to be based around 4 primary issues. Those primary issues is there be free and open commerce and a rule of law so that you can successfully prosecute environmental justice, human rights justice, and fair labor practices. That's fundamentally what the United States policy has to be. Trade will happen whether the United States participates or not. The way trade currently goes on is that the USTR negotiates with various countries. Those countries then in turn come back to Congress to sign either bilateral or multilateral agreements with the United States of America. The role and responsibility of Congress is, before signing on to any document or adhering to it, that they've adhered to those bottom principles. Those principles go directly to the question in terms of making sure that the humanitarian interests, the environmentalist interests, and the labor laws are being followed by those countries. Unfortunately, more often than not, they are not. And the United States hasn't been able to bargain in a way that makes sense. I'm proud to have stood up in Congress against particular specifically negotiated deals by the USTR and this administration that I believe were not in the interest of the American people. But we're part of a global economy. As I said before, there is a global convergence that's going on, and global trade is very much a part of it. We see it in the policies that look to outsource jobs. We've continued, and I continue to support, providing tax incentives to draw businesses back to this country, successfully like Ireland did with the Celtic Tiger, making sure that we're able to bring businesses back home by not providing them tax breaks abroad and incentivizing them to leave there and along with them their employment. It becomes also an opportunity again to employ American people first, because we recognize, no matter what the time has been, that there will always be certain displacement of jobs. And if those jobs aren't replaced by future investment in your country, in its infrastructure, in its technology, then you can't grow your economy locally. When you can't keep the circular flow of goods and services here in the country for lack of job and initiative, then the taxes of the local community become overburdened, and the state community becomes overburdened, and you don't have the opportunity to provide for your citizens the goods and services that they require. So it's, Bill Clinton used to say, think global, but act local. And that's what we need to do. And those are the policies that I'll continue to support in the United States Congress.
Thank you, gentlemen. We now have an opportunity for our closing statements in the reverse order from which we started. So, Mr. Visconti, you will be first, Mr. Larson, followed by Mr. Fournier.
Thank you again to St. Bridget's, Bill. I'm getting tired, and I think a lot of people are getting tired of hearing from John Larson, the dog ate my homework, it was somebody else. It's important for us to understand that 2 years ago, Rob Simmons and Nancy Johnson were both voted out, and they were tenured Congress people for a long time, whether you agreed with their policies or not. Connecticut residents thought they'd take a chance with some newcomers, Joe Courtney, Chris Murphy. They're in opposition to my party, but people had faith that new people coming up could do the job. And that's what I'm asking for everyone here this year. John, it's time for John to retire. He's had his shot for a decade. And there's too many policies that we were not made aware of, too many regulations that were not looked at. He wants to avoid the responsibility, and his party wants to blame the Bush administration, which there's plenty of blame to go around. And I'm not here to defend George Bush or the Bush administration. I am a Republican. I'm a local Republican, and I'm seeking to help restore and rebuild any faults and problems with the Republican Party, right from my little local community as a West Hartford town councilor. But I see it in West Hartford. I see many people think it's a wealthy town. It is, but we're having many problems. Things are coming home to roost. From the No Child Left Behind Act, which was put in by the Bush administration, has many problems affecting our local schools. John has had plenty of time to actually bring things up, put them out, and come back here and tell you what he wants to do about that. This is politics, so I just want to be clear, because I like this guy. He's a good guy. He really is. As a person, all through the campaign, he's talked to me. He's been straight up wherever we've gone. So what things I do say are political, and they only have to do with policy. I want to be clear on that. But I believe that the public is looking for change. That's the big buzzword. But another word that is not looked at is progress. And we need to look at how we measure progress and not just hope for change. Thank you.
Joe, I can understand why you wouldn't want to defend the Bush administration, clearly. And it's not my purpose here to go after the Bush administration. It's my purpose here to talk to the voters. I said at the outset that all elections are about the future. I'm proud to have been in the United States Congress for 10 years. And I'm proud, finally, in the last, well, now 20 months, to have been in the majority for the first time. Having suffered in the wilderness of being in the minority, and at times with both a Republican-controlled House and Senate and executive branch of government that I believe has led us to the problems that we have today. Now, in the last 2 years, I've been equally proud to make sure that we passed all the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission in the first 100 hours that we were in the majority, to pass the largest veterans increases in its 77-year history. I disagree with my good friend over here. We do care about these men and women that are serving, and have also provided them with the GI Bill, a GI Bill that allows them 4 years of schooling, and much more has to be done for people that are coming home with post-traumatic stress syndrome and all the other attendant things that impact the men and women and their families that are here at home. I've been proud to be in the forefront of providing that. I've been providing the opportunity, and you heard me talk again about our economic base and the need to bring home money to this district. I firmly believe in that, and I'm proud to put my name beside any piece of legislation authoring monies that come back to the 1st Congressional District to put them back to work. And most importantly, I'm proud of the educational opportunities that we're going to be performing people in the future. But it's about the future. It's about putting people back to work. It's about having health care that's affordable and accessible to all. And it's about having a job that brings you that dignity.
I'm glad the subject of the Bush administration came up because a year ago, I begged Congressman Larson to please do something about these people. I pointed out to him as a lawyer that they had committed crime after crime after crime. They waged war on false pretenses. They corrupted the federal prosecutorial function. They spy on us. Nothing was done. He said, Steve, I'd like to do something, but if I take this, if I come out for impeachment, he said, we'll just lose. We'll just lose. And, you know, that's been the attitude, I think, of our Congress, is that they've done nothing because they're sure they're going to lose. And I say, what kind of leadership is that? You know, John Larson's idea is that the people on the other side, the Republicans, he calls them, I don't know if they're any different from the Democrats, but they seem to be on a different side. And he says, well, you know, he implies anyway that their ideas are fixed and immutable and that nobody can ever persuade them of anything. Well, you know, I'm a persuader. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law 30 years, and that's what I do. And anybody that can't persuade people who have the wrong views, who are acting immorally and against the public interest, and can't persuade them to do the right thing, I say is a failure and a loser. And I think that we've been losing because our Congress has lost. Our Congress has compromised its power. They've given it away. And that means they've given away our power, because this is really our control over government is this body. This body's been corrupted. It's a club for Democrats and Republicans, and you can do something about it. I've got a sign-up sheet in the back. I've got a website, fournierforcongress.org. You can read everything. I write about everything all the time. I'm an incessant writer of letters to the editor. You won't see them because they don't get published, but I do write them. And you can read what I write about, and you can volunteer for my campaign. You can get a yard sign from me. Let's do this, please.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing, and for you good citizens who are coming out to make
I feel like I was at a roast.
We do love